Hi and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've watched my other videos. So for this video, I will be sketching Wriothesley from Genshin Impact. So for this particular drawing, as I said, it's kind of more of a sketch. I'm working on it in my sketchbook, so I'm not really as stressed for it to be the most cleanest, perfect details. I really wanted to do a more chill sketch drawing and a more detailed one at that. I did actually record my previous Kazuha sketch that I did before I did the final painting version, but because it was the exact same thing, I didn't really see much point in posting that one, other than, you know, just trying to milk more content for myself, but I didn't really feel like it. So for this sketch, I am using a fine liner to ink the character, then I'll be using watercolor after. I do only use just a bit of gouache for the background, but that was just unplanned. So yeah, that gouache palette is just sitting there looking pretty the entire time. No other purpose essentially for it. For the fine liners, I am using a Sakura plastic nib fine liner. At first when I was using them, I was actually enjoying them quite a bit, but just like every Sakura fine liner I buy lately, I kind of end up very disappointed very quickly. This one lately just feels incredibly dry. It doesn't look like it at all, but just the feeling of it, it starts feeling like it gets dry really quickly. I have multiple colors because it was like an entire color pack for this one. And yeah, I've been pretty disappointed with Sakura, and I don't know why I keep buying it, because this is like the 20th time I felt disappointed by Sakura fine liners. And I know some people have been saying that maybe there's fake versions out there, but I feel like there's even a couple I bought at an art store and it was like the same results. So I feel like I'm just gonna stick with other brands for the time being. Does anybody else feel this way about Sakura fine liners? For the background, I chose to ink it in a different color. It's just like a fun, quick little background, nothing too heavily detailed, but I also didn't want it to outshine the character in any way. Since Wriothesley really likes tea, I just wanted like him standing in his storage right behind all of his teas, drinking a cup, wondering about what's the next tea that he's gonna buy, despite having all of that tea right behind him. Moving on to the watercolor stage, I decided I was also gonna do the painting in the shades first, and then actually moving on to coloring all the areas. This time I went with blue, I believe it was ultramarine, and I kind of went in there. I think I might have even gone in there a little bit too light with the shadows. I know that for sure because when going over with the actual colors for some areas, I I have to reapply the shadows essentially, since his color palette, most of his outfit is pretty dark, and using like even darker reds and blacks and grays sort of thing, so it won't stand out as much. So if you're ever using this technique, learn from my mistakes and just don't be afraid and really apply those shadows properly if you're going to add them in. But I still like kind of having the results and just knowing where the shadows go to, even if they're too light. It does kind of really help visualize and keep in mind where the lighting is if you do struggle with that. I always find I'm the most stressed when working on the face, so I just dive right in there. I apply a lot of paint, just like whatever the main skin color, and then start applying little bits of the rosy tints here and there while the skin tone paint is still wet. This way I can actually achieve that really soft transition, which I really love seeing in other people's work, so that's kind of what I was trying to nail down here. And I was really happy that I succeeded. For the most part, I hate when I'm painting a face and it starts turning blotchy. You know, you're layering it, and I guess maybe I was too impatient and didn't wait for another layer to dry. Sometimes with watercolors, or maybe even more than sometimes, I feel like I'm always in a panicked state just because you mostly have to work with it when you're pushing around the color when it's wet to get certain effects down, and that's like, I guess, the stress, the time stress, you know. It's just like all of a sudden you have a counter and you have a timer on and you have to do it before the paint dries, otherwise it's not gonna do the thing that you want. I say this, but I'm always kind of enjoying myself as well. I think the problem every time I get into with acrylic paint is because you can kind of make any mistake and keep layering on top. I feel like I get too fiddly with it, and then I just allow myself to make more mistakes when I have the fallback of fixing things. Originally, I was going to do this for a YouTube short or, you know, an Instagram video, so very, very quick. But because I had geniusly angled the phone wrong while I was recording, it kind of was like an odd angle, and I suppose I could have zoom cut, whatever, in terms of the footage. But yeah, so currently these two triangles are covering up massive amounts of black space, so that's kind of why I didn't keep all of the footage as straight as that, just because I feel like it's pretty distracting. So yeah, back to the angled footage. So for this character, I'm pretty happy. It's fairly simple, muted color palette with kind of dark grays, blacks, and only just the accent red that goes into the outfit, which I'll eventually get to. Again, here's where I think you can start really seeing where the initial shadows I had placed weren't dark enough, and they're kind of just getting lost. And that will just require me reapplying it. So again, just make sure when you are applying your shadows, if you don't intend on going back and having to redo them, that you apply them fairly, like in terms of like the darkness, fairly liberally. And now I'm going in to apply the only accent color, which is a kind of maroony red, but it didn't pop as much as I liked it to, because, you know, I'm always comparing to a digital image, which, you know, it's a bit hard to always replicate with like a transparent medium. Some colors I find it easier, but then some it's just it's a bit of a struggle trying to figure out which colors exactly should I mix to get it right. And I think going with like the Naphthol maroon, I probably am butchering the name of that color. I think that one was like too desaturated to start with, so maybe that was my problem, because it is very muted versus probably could have mixed in more red, but I still like the contrast. It still pops, so it still works entirely. It's just me always obsessing with trying to get as close of the right color as possible. Sort of reminds me actually of an assignment I had in university way back, where we had to take a photo and then color match it using acrylic paint, and that was the assignment, to get the colors exactly correct. I hadn't realized how difficult that was until I was actually doing that assignment, because I'd never had done that before. And it kind of frustrated me that we didn't have more of those kinds of assignments in university. I guess that's typical for at least universities here, from what I know, is from public art ones, is you don't really learn as much technique as you probably would have wanted. There's still some stuff I did enjoy about the university I went to, but it's just a bit of a bummer in terms of technique and kind of pushing us to practice a lot more, because I feel like nobody really went around telling us that part, like, oh, you should focus on doing more practice and improving your skills, sort of thing, right? Because just the critiques that they gave. So I can't remember if everybody picked the exact same subject matter, but I think it was Japanese trucks decorated, like Japanese truck drivers really like decking out their trucks or something like that. Either way, it was supposed to be a very poppy, vibrant painting, I suppose, and I took a shot at doing it in watercolor for some reason. I don't know, I hadn't touched watercolor for a while and I really wanted to. So with my excitement, I had executed the painting, but the critique that I got was basically the execution was bad. But not only that, they kind of, even the professor herself, because the students do comment, they basically all were saying, oh, you can't even do that with watercolor. Why would you do that with watercolor? Which is a bit of a, weird thing to say, because it's not necessarily the medium. I think I've seen a lot of artists execute very vibrant paintings and very full of color paintings with watercolor itself. And vibrant colors, I remember that's exactly what I was striving to do so in that painting in the first place. I just didn't execute it well. So my advice is, if you ever feel like you're not entirely happy with your painting and you get a bad critique, just basically feeling like it's putting you down, just know it probably just means you need a lot more practice, is what the actual answer is. At the time, I was really hopping around different mediums quite a bit, especially wanted to do digital, and then I had even moved on to 3D modeling, and that, takes up a lot of time. So I can see why most of my traditional work had like fallen off in terms of practicing getting better for a long time before I went back to it. Apologies for the rant. Going back to the painting itself. So I at first had done a light wash for the background, but even that kind of very much warped the paper. So here I'm going in with gouache because it means using less water and just more paint. So it didn't really warp the paper any further. Right now it's pretty bad. Thankfully it's just the background itself that has that very, very wavy texture to itself. So the way I go about to fix the warpness in a bit is I just wet the back of the paper, put another paper on top of the drawing, and then put a bunch of heavy books on top. And one of the books was a old university textbook. That's kind of why I got reminded of university and went on this entire rant in the first place. It helps pretty much, as you can see in the drawing. It's not too bad. There's still a little bit of warpiness, but it's for the most part pretty much fixed. I wouldn't recommend then adding too much more layers. The character himself was fairly flat this entire time, so it was okay to paint and add touch-ups on him mostly. Better tips on how to generally fix your watercolor paper if it was like quite warped. Emily Olsen Art has a video on that, I believe, so just look her up, because I don't have I always struggle and always have most of my watercolor paintings anyway warped, even on better and higher quality papers, unfortunately. So yeah, just going over some finishing touches, nothing too heavy. I didn't want to warp the paper any more than I had to. Re-outlining the character as I usually like to do. And you'll see me just go in there with just making the steam of the tea itself. So if you've gotten this far, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.